Oh my gosh. No, we do not want to hear that. I would never ever say that in real life. Hi, my name's Imogen, I'm 19 years old and I'm currently on a gap year. But today we are not talking about my gap year. We're going to rewind back to when I originally applied to university to do politics or courses that were similar to politics, and I'm going to be reading you my personal statement. So I've dug out my personal statement from 2 years ago and I've actually got it on my laptop here. So I'm going to be putting some of the text on screen, but I guess this is kind of a reaction video because I haven't really looked at this since I did it. I used it a little bit for my new personal statement for geography, but I haven't really looked at it other than that. So the first sentence reads, as a social science, what I found most fascinating about politics is the centrality of the opposing forces of power and powerlessness. Right, that's quite a tongue twister. It's a really good job nobody actually has to read your personal statement out loud. I wouldn't say that was the strongest first sentence, but equally it wasn't the most offensive. It's straight to the point. It tells you the bits in politics that I'm really interested in, and I think that's a really good thing to do, to hone in on one topic and then kind of make that theme of your personal statement, because that's how you're going to make it personal, and as the name suggests, a personal statement should be personal. Moving on. The next bit says, even the smallest alteration in the balance of power can have a cataclysmic effect on both the political stability on a nation and the interaction and interrelationships between nations around the globe. Oh my gosh, looking back, this sounds so like fancy and I would never ever say that in real life, but I guess that's kind of what personal statements are, and they are meant to be academic and sound scholarly, like if you're applying to top universities. Also, at the end of this video, I'm going to let you know which universities I got offers from as a result of this personal statement. If I was going to rewrite this personal statement, I would probably change that sentence just because it sounds a little bit forced and a little bit overwritten. But the next sentence reads, as a member of UK Youth Parliament, I have become personally and passionately involved in the political debates and processes on a local and national level. Okay, so I picked my proudest achievement, which was Youth Parliament at that time, and I made sure that's in my first paragraph, and I think that's something that everybody could do, because a lot of the time, I don't know why, but I had this kind of preconceived idea for personal statements that your extracurriculars should be like a bit at the bottom or the penultimate paragraph and not right at the top. But actually, if it links in with your subject and you can really use it in a powerful way, then I don't see why it can't be at the top. Like, Youth Parliament for me was one of the things I was most proud of, so why shouldn't I put it at the top of my personal statement? So the next bit, it is the mutation of ideologies developed many years ago into the unpredictable and fast evolving contemporary political landscape that intrigues me and encourages me to understand the link between philosophical ideas and topical issues. So I know that university politics is very theoretical, and so that's why I put that sentence in there, because it's showing that even though I've done youth parliament and that could be like, yeah, okay, she's kind of interested in modern politics, I understand that university politics is not just about doing stuff with youth parliament. Instead, no, it's about understanding ideologies and then linking them to modern events. So that's why that sentence is in there. So on to the next paragraph. My scholarly interest in the polarisation between the powerful and the powerless followed a visit to the District 6 Museum in Cape Town. This sentence is to the point. It tells you where my passion comes from, and it's not that embarrassing, honestly, the most cliche start of a personal statement or start of a bit where I've been passionate about X, or I'm interested in X, or I've always wanted to be a dancer ever since I could walk. No, we do not want to hear that. The universities do not care. They're going to see straight through you. They're going to be like, does she really want to be a dancer? No. The key thing that really helped me when writing my personal statement was to pick one thing that was going to form the kind of central idea of my personal statement. And I found this with my EPQ, just because it's a piece of research that I've done. Doing an EPQ already shows that you can do research at the universities, which is a positive. And it was about geography and politics, so I could link it to my politics and I could form a theme around it, which was power and powerlessness. Lovely, job done. Not quite. We still have quite a bit more to write after I decided on my idea, but I did find that having an idea and kind of knitting everything together in the context of one piece of research or one main idea was so much easier than just writing your achievements down on paper, because that's not going to read well and it's also not going to be very easy to write. The apartheid regime in South Africa clearly demonstrated the consequences of a concentration of power within a state. In my EPQ, I explored how 20 years after its end, one specific community, District 6, is hampered by the system of institutionalised racism that dominated a nation due to the powerless being denied both voice and vote. So I use my EPQ, but if you've done any form of like research work, or you've done any coursework, or you've done an EPQ yourself, then I would definitely recommend putting that into your personal statement, because it's a really easy way of showing that you've done some research, already having some kind of knowledge around what you're actually talking about. And I don't know, I just found it really easy to write my personal statement based off my EPQ and not just writing it from scratch. So now we move on to the academic book kind of article, all of that sort of stuff, the academic section of your personal statement. And I'm not an avid reader. I don't think I've ever read a book from cover to cover that is really, really properly academic. However, I did manage to get around this, and I'm going to tell you exactly how. This definitely isn't the best advice to be giving, but you know, honesty is always the best policy, so that's what I'm going to give you. So the next line of my personal statement reads, I can't even say the person's name. Paulo Freire, you'll see it on the screen now. The Brazilian philosopher suggests in pedagogy of the oppressed. As you can tell, I had not read this book. That washing one's hand of the conflict between the powerful and the powerless means to side with the powerful, not to be neutral. And I'm not going to lie to you here. I googled quotes to do with power and powerlessness, and this guy came up, Paulo Freire or whatever his quote came up, and I thought, oh, that sounds quite interesting. So I did a little bit of googling. Said he was a Brazilian philosopher. Yeah, he's written a couple of books. I thought, lovely, you're going straight in my personal statement. Never read the book, and let me tell you, the reason that I knew I could do this was because I knew that I wasn't going to have interviews for any of my subjects at any of the universities that I was applying to. So if you know you are going to have interviews for your subject at university, then you need to have read the books. I mean, that's kind of a given, but why am I sat here giving you this absolutely awful advice? Anyway, we're just going to have to move on. So, when presenting my EPQ, I was inspired by the brilliant Brazilian philosopher man whose book I've actually not read, to reflect on other instances of displacement and the reasons for the displaced population's lack of empowerment. This gave me an insight into critical geopolitics, the notions of the meaning of a defined space and the negotiation and renegotiation of identity associated with that space. Then we move on. There are significant similarities between the false promises from those in power to the displaced Grenfell Tower population to the District 6 community in South Africa. However, a key difference was the use of social media to raise the profile of the issue, aiding the powerless. At the end of that paragraph, I've written about a key difference between the two situations, showing that I've thought critically and a bit more in depth about what I'm talking about. So the next section of my personal statement reads, I became interested in the powerlessness of refugees several years before my more academic interest in this as a political issue. Here we go with the non-academic extracurriculars. So, I was inspired to aid the humanitarian effort in Songat, leading a project to renovate a caravan, enabling 2 unaccompanied minors to have a safe place to live, and enabling me to gain a greater understanding of how small charities operate. I gained key skills such as leadership, teamwork, and time management. So I've not just said what I've done, but I've said what I gained from it, and that is really, really important. I've also linked it to the powerlessness of refugees, and as we know, power and powerlessness is the key theme of my personal statement. So I hope now that you're starting to get the idea that everything needs to link in some way to each other. The next paragraph. My interest in humanitarianism and global governance also coincided with my geographical studies this year. I think a really important thing to note here is I didn't just apply for straight politics, so I was applying for International Disaster Management and Humanitarian Response, which is a really niche course at Manchester University. So I needed to make sure that my personal statement didn't just talk about politics, but also kind of address the fact that I also wanted a place in that course. I have enjoyed learning about the different types of migration and how these are portrayed by both national and international media. So realistically, this paragraph is probably my weakest in my personal statement because it was purely to put in some of the extracurriculars. I love to travel and experience different cultures firsthand. This summer I helped students learn English at an international summer school, and I travelled solo around Southeast Asia and Australia. I mean, I think if I was to rewrite this, I could have thought of not better extracurriculars, but ones that linked better with what I was actually writing about. But at the time, that was a really big achievement for me, so I wanted to make sure it was in there. And as you can see, it didn't link quite as well as the other paragraphs to my overall theme. And a useful tip linked to this is, if you are reapplying, before you shut down your old UCAS account, phone up UCAS and ask for your old reference from your school, because then you're going to be able to know what your school have written about you last year, and chances are if they haven't seen you for the whole year, they're going to write something pretty similar for the following year. And you can make sure you're not repeating things that your school will already have said about you and the university will already read about you. So the penultimate paragraph. Recently, I visited the United Nations in Geneva for work experience, gaining a greater insight into how a global organisation works to keep peace, but at the same time maintain a neutral political position. I'm beginning to appreciate the truth summed up in Jo Cox's international more in common than divide speech, but also the complexity of the global political context to this truth. Now, I've mentioned Jo Cox's inspirational speech, which you might be sat there thinking, well, that's not that academic. And honestly, no, it's not. But at least it shows that I'm interested in the subject and I really have gone outside and above and beyond, because that's not something you learn at A-level. But at least it shows I have a genuine interest in the subject. And I think that that's what your personal statement should be about. It should be about showing things that you are really interested in your subject. I've often felt powerless when decisions are being made that will determine my future. However, I have frequently used different types of media as a youth parliamentarian to raise awareness and press for change on issues such as votes at 16. So in there's a couple of different things I want to talk about. The first thing being I've used the phrase different types of media, and if you remember above, I talked about types of social media and the impact that had on the Grenfell Tower situation compared to the District 6 situation. And I think that's a really interesting point to make, that actually you can use the same words throughout your personal statement to draw it together. That's just another way of showing that it's a really cohesive document. Also, I've talked about being a member of Youth Parliament, because in the introduction I really only briefly mentioned it and I didn't talk about the impact that has on me as a person and why that makes me a good person to study at their university. And that is what your personal statement is all about. Why should they pick you to study at their university? I've recently been reflecting on social contract theory and Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan. Obviously, I had not read Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan. That is a massive book, I'm pretty certain. However, we had studied at A-level and it was something I'd found interesting. The other thing was I knew that my course at university, like the politics courses that I was applying to, are very theoretical. And so it's important that I didn't just mention modern politics in my personal statement, but I also did talk a little bit about political theories, which is kind of what I was trying to do here. The balance between the powerful and the powerless is constantly evolving, and this is challenging political systems. So we've taken Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan and we have linked it back to the powerful and the powerless. Now, if I was going to critique this a little bit, I could probably unpack Leviathan a little bit more, but honestly, I didn't have the characters or the willpower to actually read that book and properly understand it, so that's why that's not in there. So my final sentence, the big finale of my personal statement, reads: by continuing my political studies at university, I want to continue to be a full participant in the contemporary debate around authority, rights and freedom, emanating from ancient philosophical ideas. So I'm saying, yes, you can see in my personal statement that my extracurriculars suggest that I'm interested in modern politics. However, I understand that it is the merging of modern politics and also the ideas that I'm going to learn about at university that will make me a really, really good student. I understand that the key debates in politics are around authority, rights and freedom. They are also big keywords in politics. And you should definitely give me an offer to study at your university, because I do know what I'm talking about. I've also said why I actually want to study politics, and this is really important. Either this should be your first sentence or this should be your last sentence, why you want to study the subject that you want to study at university. So that is my personal statement. If I'm honest, there's definitely things I would have changed in my personal statement if I were to rewrite it now. But on the whole, I was quite pleased with it. And I really hope that this has helped you out if you're just starting to write your personal statement, or you're looking for a little bit more inspiration on what actually needs to go in your personal statement. This personal statement actually got me an offer at all 5 of the universities that I applied to that year. So they were Manchester University for International Disaster Management and Humanitarian Response, and then the other 4 were all for politics. So they were Edinburgh, Bristol, Warwick and Royal Holloway University, London. So, I mean, I guess this is a successful personal statement. I really hope that you have found this video useful. If you have, then definitely do give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe down below to see more applying to university content from me. I'm hoping to do the same video with my geography personal statement for this year. So definitely do keep your eyes peeled for that one if you're looking for some more personal statement videos. And if you have any questions or anything else to say, then just leave me a comment down below. Have a lovely day and I will see you next time with a new video.